Ohio State's offseason has started, and they're already starting to make moves. But are they the right moves? We'll talk about it. Welcome into the Big Ten Huddle as we are talking about Cortez Hankton, the new wide receiver coach for Ohio State. Obviously, Brian Hartline took the head coaching job at South Florida, and now Cortez Hankton will be the one who is given the responsibility to uphold the wide receiver room at Ohio State that has been the best in the nation for 4, 5, 6 years running at this point, especially with all the first rounders that they have produced into the NFL. Brian Hartline has been the best recruiter in the country. He has been the best position coach in the country. Was not quite the best offensive coordinator in the country, but that's not what they're going to ask Cortez Hankton to do. They're going to ask Cortez Hankton to come in from LSU, be the wide receiver coach at Ohio State, and try to coach up the likes of Jeremiah Smith, Mylan Graham, Brandon Ennis, Chris Henry Jr. coming in. They did lose Bryson Rogers this offseason, but that was not much of a surprise as he tried to transfer once, did not get the offers he wanted, it sounded like, went back to Ohio State, and we'll see what happens here. If you look at his Instagram activity, does not look like he will be coming back this time. Cortez Hankton was a New Orleans native, definitely going to help Ohio State down in recruiting in LSU or in the Louisiana country with some of those connections. So that's excellent. Played his college football at Texas Southern, could have some connections down there in Texas, as he was a school record holder in both season and career receiving yards. Well, not season receiving yards, but in career receiving yards. They had a fantastic career there, long-time player and everything else. He was undrafted in 2003, but carved out a nice 6-year, a 6-year job, whatever you want to call it, at the Jacksonville Jaguars there. A 6-year career, primarily with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Sorry, I was getting my words twisted up there. But in his time as a wide receiver coach, he has coached the likes of George Pickens, Malik Nabers, Brian Thomas Jr., McCole Holman, Nicole Holman, Hardman. I'm getting all mixed up with my names, but Nicole Hardman. And there's a lot of people asking the question, is he a downgrade? Because he has coached a number of excellent wide receivers in his career. There's some people that are questioning this hire, but as far as I'm concerned, you weren't going to make a hire that was better than Brian Hartline. So is he as downgrade as a hire? I think so, but I don't think anybody would have been an upgrade as a hire. Maybe Mike Shanahan at Indiana, but he just signed an extension to Indiana there. He would have maybe been an upgrade because he has offensive coordinator and wide receiver coaching to him. But even he has not produced the NFL talent as a wide receiver coach that Brian Hartline has been able to produce. And he obviously does not have the recruiting that Brian Hartline does. So we're going to get into this hire. Let's talk about Cortez Hankton, where he's been, how did he get to this point, and go from there. So let's bring up the thing here. There we go. All right, I've got his Wikipedia here with all of his stops and everything. Coached at Dartmouth for 2 years or 3 years from 2012 2014. Then he made his way to Vanderbilt for a few years. Then Georgia was there from 2018, where he was wide receivers coach, upgraded to the passing game coordinator and wide receiver coach from 2019 to 2021. And then LSU for the past 4 years. 2 years he was the passing game coordinator and wide receiver coach. The past 2 years he was co-offensive coordinator and wide receiver coach there as well. Now he is going to Ohio State, and I think it says something that Hankton has continued to climb the ladder, right? Started as just a wide receiver coach, then passing game coordinator and wide receiver coach. I know those titles don't mean a lot to some people, but I do think they mean something in this instance, because then from there, his past 2 years at LSU, he gets the co-offensive coordinator role, but I don't think he's coming in. At least none of the reporting is saying that he's coming in to be an offensive coordinator. Maybe he gets a co-offensive coordinator role, but it seems like there's other guys that might get that role on here too. But a lot of angst online from LSU and Georgia fans talking about how this is a terrible hire for Ohio State. This is an awful job by them. What a downgrade. Yada yada yada. And I would just say this before you get too caught up in the hate of SEC fans talking about Ohio State. People love to hate Ohio State, so take this kind of hate with a grain of salt. Don't let other people form your opinion on Cortez Hankton. Obviously, they've had him as a coach for a number of years, so they would have some thoughts there. But oftentimes, when coaches move on, there's not a whole lot of great feelings about them, and unfortunately for Ohio State, it's a national holiday for college football when Ohio State loses, and so you're just going to continue to see the pile on. Ohio State, when they lost their defensive coordinator, Jim Knowles, to Penn State. Everybody, went on and on and on about how terrible it was for Ohio State. And you saw what happened with Jim Knowles this past year at Penn State and how that didn't exactly work out for them so well. A lot of people wanted to talk about how terrible the hire was of Matt Patricia to Ohio State. And, oh, this is going to go awful. Did you see him at the Lions? Yada, yada, yada. Pretty darn good this year. Never allowed a team to score any more than 17 points on them. You can talk about the 24 that Miami had, but one of those was a pick six. Nobody ever scored more than 17 points on this Ohio State defense in a single game, and even the team that had the most success against them in Miami, at least it felt like from a physical standpoint and moving the ball, they were only able to get 125 passing yards from Carson Beck. So Matt Patricia, very good hire for Ohio State. Obviously, they want to keep him around. A lot of people question that one, and that one seemed to work out okay. And Ryan Day has been very good with his hires recently at Ohio State. I feel good about Ryan Day going into these. Now, if there was some issues with some past hires, I mean, probably the last one you can think of that was an issue was Parker Fleming. If there were some issues recently, I might have some more um, apprehension here with it, I guess is the right word. But overall, you look at Hankton and what he's done with George Pickens, Malik Nabers, Brian Thomas Jr., these guys, he's done an excellent job. And a lot of people will talk about the fall off after those years, right? Because you had Cortez Hankton go to LSU, he had Malik Nabers, he had Brian Thomas Jr., and then they lost those two players and say, well, what happened to it? Why weren't the wide receivers as good? And I would just remind people, when coordinator changes happen, that impacts this kind of stuff and that impacts production more than a lot of people think it impacts the wide receiver coach, because the wide receiver coach is just doing what the offensive coordinator tells him to do. I do think there's a little bit more validity to LSU because he is the co-offensive coordinator, but still we know who was the real offensive coordinator there at LSU. That was Joe Sloan. So Mike Denbrock was there in 2022 and 2023 when they had a lot of their success with their wide receivers, Malik Nabers, guys like that. And then in 2024 and 2025, that's when you saw more of the issues start to pop up, and that's when they had Joe Sloan come in as the offensive coordinator. Georgia, similar thing there as well. Georgia fans like to say that he decimated their wide receiver room and everything else. I got news for you, though, Georgia fans. You decimate your own wide receiver room with the way that you utilize wide receivers. Wide receivers don't want to go play for Georgia. So if you want to talk about how he's not a great recruiter at Georgia, he got George Pickens to go to Georgia, and George Pickens had a pretty good career there. But people saw the talent of George Pickens and said maybe he was a little bit underutilized because of the way that Kirby utilizes his offense and does things. And I do think there could be a little bit of frustration with some players looking at Ohio State with their kind of slow pace of play and stuff like that. But this is still Ohio State, where it's been a wide receiver factory before Brian Hartline. Obviously, Brian Hartline enhanced it, but it's going to continue to be a wide receiver destination for many guys. The wide receiver production and everything else, under the coaches that came before Brian Hartline and with Brian Hartline, did an excellent job. And I think that Cortez Hankton is obviously somebody that has produced really good wide receivers. And I think with a lot of talent already in the room, he's going to have the opportunity to produce some more really good wide receivers with the likes of, like I said, Jeremiah Smith, Mylan Graham, Brandon Ennis, Chris Henry Jr. coming in, and a load of other guys in that room as well. And who knows, they might go out and get a guy or two for the wide receiver room. We'll see what happens with the transfer portal. There were some rumors about Cortez Hankton with him and, a staffer and a recruit's parent and stuff like that. I would just remind people that there are always a lot of rumors about a lot of this stuff. And in SEC country, these rumors spread like even more wildfire than other places. I'm not saying that the rumors aren't true. I have no idea. But I would just say I trust Ryan Day a whole lot more than I trust some internet message board rumors and stuff like that. Look, there were a lot of rumors about Matt Patricia and how terrible he was, and everybody hated him and nobody wanted to be around Matt Patricia. He's gotten to Ohio State. He's been incredibly pleasant for the media to deal with. He's done a great job of connecting with his players. The players have nothing but great things to say about him. So these rumors all proved to be false as well, or as well. These rumors all proved to be false, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of these rumors about Cortez Hankton proved to be false too. I'm sure we'll get some LSU fans and some Georgia fans in the comments saying backwards hat guy is stupid. That's fine, whatever. But the way I see it, I don't think I don't think Ryan Day, with his history of hiring head coaches, how much he cares about culture, how much he cares about all that stuff, is going to hire a coach that has done some of the things that the rumors and the message boards and the fans down south have kind of accused him for. And the other thing I'll say about recruiting with Cortez Hankton at LSU, I don't think people realize how much the head coach matters in recruiting. Yes, you as a wide receiver coach or running back coach need to go out there and pick your guys and bring them to your head coach. But at the end of the day, a lot of recruits are not going to sign if they don't feel good about the head coach. And if you hear a lot of, just go back. It's probably hard to do it at this point. Go back to what happened when Brian Kelly was fired at LSU. Go back and listen to Josh Pate talk about when he was fired at LSU and all the issues that happened there. Those were not just internet rumors and message board stuff. This was talked about by real national media people like Josh Pate, who came on and said, yeah, Brian Kelly wasn't trying all that hard. Brian Kelly wasn't committed to this job because he stuck up for Brian Kelly and said this is a great hire when they made it. And then honestly, Brian Kelly's not been a great recruiter dating back even to Notre Dame. So Brian Kelly not trying all that hard, a history of not being a great recruiter. I think that matters more than some people realize. LSU fans will say that the recruiting dropped off for him and everything else, but I think that getting a guy like George Pickens to go to Georgia when Georgia didn't exactly have, the best offense for wide receivers under Kirby Smart, to be able to do that, bring him in and not just turn him. He was a 5-star, he was an excellent talent, but to help him become the talent that he was and now doing what he's doing in the NFL and everything. I think it's significant, and I think that a lot of people are poo-pooing this hire of Cortez Hankton just because of internet, people upset about it. What LSU fans and Georgia fans are saying, they might be right. We'll see, but I would say wait and see. I'm not saying he's the best hire in the world. I'm not saying that it's a terrible hire. I'm saying wait and see. There are some promising things. There are some concerning things, but overall, I trust Ryan Day, the guys that he hires, the guys that he brings in, and I find it very hard to believe that Ryan Day would not do his homework on some of this stuff to know what's going on. The other piece of this does give us some clues to what's going on with the offensive coordinator position at Ohio State. You can only have 10 countable coaches. Now, a lot of people get this mixed up. You can only have 10 countable coaches for recruiting. You can have more than 10 countable coaches coaching on field and working with players now. So there is a little bit of leeway here. If you want your offensive coordinator to be a coach that is a accountable coach in recruiting, then you are going to have to choose a person from the current staff to be to be the offensive coordinator, unless you go out and maybe fire somebody or kind of graciously let somebody else move on and then hire somebody else. But if you look at the current staff right now, if that were to happen, really your three options are probably the co-offensive coordinator, Keenan Bailey. I would not love that move. If Ryan Day does that, I do not love that for Ohio State. I do not think that would be a good move. The other two options would be the quarterback coach, Billy Fessler, who has history of being an offensive coordinator at Akron. However, I believe he was with Joe Moorhead there. Let me double check that really fast. Yep. He was the co-offensive coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator and quarterback coach. I should probably bring this up for Joe Moorhead at Akron in 2023, and then he made his way on over to Ohio State after that. So Billy Fessler, although it is very slim, he does have some offensive coordinator experience, and then your other offensive coach with some offensive coordinator experience on the staff is Tyler Bowen, who was at Virginia Tech. He got hired away as the offensive coordinator and tight ends coach there to come over to Ohio State. So they hired him away to come there. He has offensive coordinator experience, and he was the run game coordinator this season as well. So we'll see what happens here. I would not be surprised if Ohio State goes out there and gets, a coordinator who is not accountable recruiter or something like that. I think it would be a very interesting move. I'm not sure we've seen that from a program like Ohio State yet. Please correct me if I'm wrong. If Oregon or, LSU or Georgia or Alabama has done something like this yet, but I'm not sure we've seen something like that. But we know Ohio State always has a plan. We know Ryan Day has been, very interesting with the way he's worked out some of the coaching rules and stuff. Ohio State had 3 offensive line coaches this year. Obviously, Tyler Bowen was the one that was the recruiting guy and stuff like that. But they had 3 different guys that were working with the offensive linemen. So we'll see what happens with the offensive coordinator position. I think if I had to guess right now, it's probably going to be Keenan Bailey just because he was the co-offensive coordinator and everything else. But if that happens, you're not going to have a play caller. I don't think Ryan Day hands over the play calling to Keenan Bailey. If he was going to do that, he probably would have done that by this time now, or maybe he didn't want to give it to him in this stressful of a situation. We'll see. But I think they probably need to go with an outside hire at the offensive coordinator here. Somebody who is like a Bill O'Brien, is like a Chip Kelly, who has a lot of experience calling plays, working things, who is going to be flexible to be able to come in, run, portions of Ryan Day's offense, but also come in with some of their own stuff. That's what Chip Kelly did super well for Ohio State last year. He came in, installed a lot of his run game stuff, and was able to do a really good job with the RPO and getting Ohio State into that, and also did a great job of calling plays, and him and Ryan Day worked really well together on that. Can't hire Chip Kelly now, though, because Chip Kelly over there at Northwestern. Wouldn't be surprised if Lincoln Keenholz makes his way over to Northwestern. We'll see. Going to be very interesting stuff. Thank you so much for watching the Big Ten Huddle. Please do like, subscribe for more good Big Ten football content here. We will have a live going out tonight after the Indiana game. Oregon just won. We got a little bit of a break here, so that's why I went ahead and recorded this. Oregon just won 23-0. We'll talk about that game. We'll talk about the Indiana game, and we'll talk more about some of these transfer portal exits for Ohio State. Lincoln Keenholz, Jelani Thurman, if any more might be on their way. We'll see. Have a good one. See you next time.